innovation of the television has been nothing short of revolutionary. Its impact on the American political landscape has created widespread changes on American politics, which have been and continue to be felt to this day. The television's origins come from September 7, 1927, when Philo T. Farnsworth sent the first images from his image dissector, Camera 2. Within a decade, he had refined it into a fully electronic, non-mechanical system that was presented to the world on August 25, 1934. His work, along with technological achievements from competing RCA, spurred the development of the first marketable television ever. Nevertheless, the presence of World War II disrupted any significant progress or expansion until after the mid-20th century. Its exploding popularity since then has led to phenomenal changes in the nature of American politics, for better and for worse. Before these radical changes would take place, politicos had to make do with what they had. Politicians like Franklin Delano Roosevelt tried to reach out to the American public using radio, notably with his famous fireside chats. Presidential hopefuls excessively toured the nation, campaigning vigorously from one stop to another, speaking directly to small crowds at a time. But television would forever change that. One of the earliest uses of television was the marketing of candidates. The quickest to leap was Republican presidential candidate Dwight D. Eisenhower in the election of 1952. The election was held with very visible public uneasiness due to the Korean War, growing inflation, and rampant fears of communist infiltration within the government. Eisenhower thus utilized television advertising pioneer Rosser Reeves and Walt Disney to create the very first televised political ads.
President, you like Guyton, I like Guyton, everybody likes Guyton for president. Hang out the banner, beat the drum, we'll take Guyton to Washington, we'll take Guyton to Washington.
His ads were key in creating his image as a fatherly figure, protecting the homeland from any external threats.
Promote a politician or a person like they were packaged goods, invariably. And basically, the politician now becomes the brand. And that had not been the way that a politician presented him or herself.
The whistle-stop train campaigning and regular radio broadcasts were slowly fading as remnants of the past, as the television proved far more effective in reaching the American populace. Yet as revolutionary as Eisenhower's ads were, it was only the beginning. Only 34% of American households had television at the time. The audience that television could reach was still relatively small. But this would set the stage for future political developments. Soon after, having witnessed the extraordinary advantages that television displayed, numerous other politicians followed.
It's wonderful how sitting right here in my own library, thanks to television, I can talk to millions of people that I couldn't reach any other way.
After Eisenhower's first 1952 TV ads, the importance of televised political ads grew exponentially. Likewise, as more televisions permeated American society, another significant development was displayed in the Nixon-Kennedy debates. For instance, Richard Nixon was easily portrayed in his commercials as a heroic, confident figure. Now a politician's real personality and appearance had to be molded for perfect display on television, not like an image shown in commercials, which could be easily manipulated.
It transformed the process, because it was so obvious that it made such, it was so significant. It was undeniable that Kennedy won the election by a slim margin that he did, only because of the debates.
Nixon seemed sickly, as he had just recuperated from illness and his shifty eyes projected a nervous demeanor. His refusal to put on makeup only exacerbated this. Kennedy, on the other hand, having just returned from campaigning in California, was sporting a healthy tan and appeared confident. Consequently, those listening on radio felt that Nixon, with his more articulate points and masterful speech, was the clear winner. For those watching on television, Kennedy, exuding self-assurance, was the better of the two. The ability of the television to emphasize image in order to persuade the masses was obvious.
If you're turning the politicians into commodities and products, which they have now been turned into, clearly, the cosmetic aspect becomes more significant.
From this point on, appearance was everything. One of the most notorious and contentious developments was the emergence of mudslinging and negative campaigning tactics. Unlike in 1952, from 1960 onward, an American household without television was a rarity. Now, with the potential to reach nearly all 180 million Americans, Lyndon B. Johnson would air the controversial Daisy ad, infamous for using subliminal messaging to play on an American public fearful of nuclear Armageddon.
These are the stakes. To make a world in which all of God's children can live.
Vote for President Johnson on November 3rd.
Such negative campaign tactics in television focusing on ad hominem attacks would reemerge time and time again, remaining an important political tool all the way to the present day. But television was not always to the politicians' advantage. Politicians began to be increasingly kept in check by television. High-profile cases like that of Joseph McCarthy were called out for their actions by television notables like Edward R. Murrow, a newscaster at CBS during the 1960s. Yet these would be nothing compared to the coverage of the Vietnam War. Vietnam, the first ever televised war, triggered a giant backlash against the US government. The three major TV news stations, CBS, NBC, and ABC, broadcasted our soldiers fighting in the jungles of Vietnam, fully displaying all the horrors of war to American society. And although many lauded this move as a milestone in government transparency, others bemoaned the television presence as a hindrance to the war effort.
Absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind that television coverage of the war turned most people in the United States against the war.
Nonetheless, Walter Cronkite and other anchormen issued critical reports of the war and its leadership, either on-site or behind the news desk. Even President Lyndon B. Johnson lamented, "If I've lost Cronkite, I've lost America." He would not seek re-election. Popular discontent would not be easily suppressed or hidden, as shown by the protesting crowds in the 1968 Democratic National Convention that chanted, "The whole world is watching." So too was Washington. Furthermore, the perfect image had to be paired with the perfect message. Audiences lowered their attention spans toward a politician's message, and a politician had to adjust accordingly. Thus came sound bites to summarize a politician's point. Television forced politicians to simplify their agendas to keep people interested. As time went on, this pattern only proved to hold true. John F. Kennedy's famous words in 1961,
my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country,
are followed by George H.W. Bush's in 1988.
Read my lips. No new taxes.
Only to be eclipsed by Barack Obama's in 2008.
Yes, we can!
But despite some simplifications of the campaign, spending reached new heights, with large portions of the money spent on TV spots. Without the money for spending on television for exposure, electoral victory would be a miracle. Like the tactics of candidates before him, Obama's greater spending on TV ads successfully paid off in election victory. Recent elections saw presidential candidates John McCain and Barack Obama spend over $125 million and $235 million respectively on nearly 400 televised ads. And looking back, it is evident that television was revolutionary in American politics. Television detrimentally condensed political messages, raised campaign costs, and fostered the development of mudslinging tactics. They also had a positive effect by keeping politicians in check, by allowing political messages to reach the nation, and by spreading these messages in a manner faster than ever. Yet we find now that the television is cementing itself as a remnant of the past, rather than a force of our day and age. As shown in the 2008 presidential election, Democratic nominee Barack Obama commanded a faithful following by communicating constantly to unprecedented levels on platforms like Facebook, text messages, Twitter, and email. The revolutionary age of television in American politics is setting. And now we watch. We watch as the digital era begins to dawn.